US President Donald Trump has drawn flack once again. This time around, Trump has expressed his desire for the federal government to take over election-related powers of the states ahead of the midterm polls. He said this. Speaking with former FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino on his podcast, Trump expressed a wish to nationalize voting and urged Republicans to take over voting in at least 15 states. The US president hinted at irregularities in votes counted in Democrat-ruled states. As per the US Constitution, remember, states are empowered to not only provide the time and place of elections, but also aspects like supervision of voting, protection of voters, prevention of fraud, and counting of votes. The president also predicted fresh revelations regarding rigging after FBI's raids in Georgia last week. The searches were seen as an endeavor to seize election records and probe alleged voter fraud in the 2020 presidential polls. Donald Trump has often claimed that this election was stolen from him. Now remember, Trump's remarks come in the wake of his repeated worry about losing the upcoming midterms, which will see 435 seats in the House of Representatives, while 35 Senate seats go to polls in November this year. Trump has cited historical trends that have seen the party in power lose seats in the second year of the presidency. Earlier this year, the American president told the House Republicans at their annual retreat that he will get impeached if he doesn't win the midterms. And subsequently, he reportedly expressed his desire to cancel the polls altogether. While the White House later clarified that Trump was only joking, his remarks raised serious concerns about his future plans. For instance, during his Iowa speech last week, Trump again hinted at the possibility of running for a third term, which is barred under the US Constitution. He also warned that very bad things will happen if Republicans lose the midterms.
If we lose the midterms, you'll lose so many of the things that we're talking about, so many of the assets that we're talking about, so many of the tax cuts that we're talking about, and it would lead to very bad things.
All right, let me welcome Mr. Lincoln Mitchell. He's a political analyst and professor at the School of International and Public Affairs at the Columbia University. He's joining us live from New York. Good evening. Welcome to WION, Lincoln Mitchell. I want to start by asking you, how seriously should the world be taking, specifically Americans, be taking Donald Trump's statement after statement, whether there should be no midterms, there should be the nationalization of elections? How do you take these statements?
These should be taken very seriously. But on the other hand, it's been clear to me, and I've said this since the 2024 election, that Trump has no intention of allowing free, fair, and democratic elections in the United States. And this is just part of that. So even if they don't nationalize the elections, which I'm not even sure if Trump knows what that means, what he's doing here is planting the seed among his voters that if they lose, if the Republicans lose, and all the polls say they will lose, then it's because of election fraud. There has been no shred of evidence of election fraud against the Republicans in 2020, 2022, 2018, 2024, basically in the last decade or so. There is ample evidence of Republicans passing laws to make it more difficult for Democrats to vote, right? The handful of cases we've had of election fraud in the United States have prosecuted Republicans. Donald Trump is afraid of free and fair elections. That's been evident for some time now, and this has to be seen in that context. Remember, this is someone who cheered on a violent riot at the Capitol because he wouldn't accept that he lost the 2020 election. That's what we're talking about here. Here's the argument
that Republicans give. They say that, look, what's the problem with, say, a SAVE Act, which only wants voters to carry their photo ID while they're voting? It happens across the world.
Well, that's not the only argument Republicans are making. The problem with that act is not particularly much, except for that different states have different criteria for what identification is allowed. So first of all, the people who don't have ID, and remember, in the United States, we don't have national ID cards or internal passports or anything like that. So you generally have an ID because you need something, a driver's license or something like that. The people who don't have official IDs tend to skew older, poorer, non-white, and more democratic. And then in some states, for example, Texas, student IDs issued by the state, public universities, are not accepted, and hunting licenses are. But in general, this ID question is a red herring. The real issue here, I would say, is that the Republicans want to do things like have fewer voting places per capita in heavily Democratic cities than in Republican areas. just a little thing like that, want to may have fewer drop boxes or not allow mail-in voting at all. So to say this is about ideas, really, it's a Republican talking point, but it's kind of nonsense. The bottom line here is that Trump still is trying to tell lies about the 2020 election. There is not a major figure in American political life in the last 100 years who has so clearly demonstrated his contempt for free, fair, and democratic elections as Donald Trump has. So when he says we need to make elections more fair, anybody who believes him for a split second is so far down the MAGA fascist rabbit hole that they cannot be taken seriously.
So help me understand this, Lincoln, then. Do you think these statements that come out from Trump week after week are coming from a place of fear as well of losing the midterms? One, because history has it, there's only once or twice that a sitting president and his party have won the midterms. Second, of course, his approval ratings going down with the kind of ICE shootings that have happened and the tariff inflation that has happened in America.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if a president comes along, tanks the economy, kidnaps people off the streets, shoots American citizens in cold blood, they're not going to be doing so well in the polls. Now, I'm not so sure how much this is about 2026. As soon as the polls closed in 2024 in November and Donald Trump became the winner, most people assumed the Democrats would win back the House in 2026. This is largely about 2028. This is about, they can live with a Democratic House. They can even live with a Democratic Senate. When he says he will be impeached, understand that he will not be removed from office because you need 2/3 of the Senate, and that's simply not going to happen. This is about 2028. This is about a fear beginning with Trump and the people around him that if they lose in 2028, and if we have a free, fair, and democratic election, that very likely will happen, that they will not escape justice, that they will be held accountable for their criminal actions in a way that was not the case in 2024. And we look at just simply the corruption, which we don't talk about much because it doesn't always break through, but the billions of dollars to which Trump has enriched himself, he's got a lot to be scared of, as do some of the thugs and handmaidens of this regime around him. So this is more about 2028 than 2026. And anyone who thinks the Constitution will stop Trump from running for a third term is also living in a fantasy world.
Okay, I'll leave it there, Lincoln. I see, a poster of John Lennon behind you. Hopefully there will be peace. And Americans like yourselves have been talking about how, they're dreamers, but they're not the only ones. And hopefully there will be peace soon. There will be sanity around. But I'll leave it there, Lincoln. Thanks very much for joining us on WION and sharing your perspective.
Thank you.